Okay, so what we've been trying to do lately is just make it just a little bit more active. So we've been working a long time on just embedding ourselves in the field of gravity and allowing that to pull us down, becoming passive in relation to the forces that are operating upon us. Now, the problem with that is that you settle onto the ground. So you become like a stack of bricks or a pillar. So what we want to do is get into the ground. We want a root. A root penetrates, it goes into the soil. So John always used to say there's two aspects to root. One is your energy going into the ground, and the other is the ground's energy coming up into you. So there's this definite region where you're overlapping with the ground. You know, you've gone in and it's come up. And to get into that, it's not enough just to settle, because you'll settle into self. Yeah? So the only way to get out of the ego, out of self, is to activate the spirit and really actively make a real effort to actually get down and into the ground. And the difficulty with it is that it just requires a different mind. So the mind that we have is constantly affirming the ego. So we are subjects looking at objects, yeah? So that split between me and the world is always bolstering, if you like, strengthening my ego. And that makes me feel good, yeah? And so we just want to try and get out of that. So instead of being here, looking out, I'm everywhere, yeah? There's this sense that what they say, my eye doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the object I'm seeing. Yeah? So this sense of almost like your eyes are on stalks, yeah? And so you're with things rather than taking things. Yeah? And that very much, that's the relationship we want with the ground. So this sense that your feet are feeling it and touching it and listening to it. So sinking and relaxing, settling into the Dantian. They're all first stages, if you like. They're a place we need to come to just to get some base relaxation, a foundation from which we can then take it further, get more real. It's something John said to me. He said, when you say, you're working hard. So you're basically, by working, by practicing, you're coming to an understanding. You're slowly understanding what it is you're meant to be doing. Now that's something you can't get any other way. Someone can give you words which you think, oh yeah, they're good. And you can repeat them, but it doesn't mean you understand. So I used to say, the work that you do brings you to an understanding. Now, it's really important that you then use that understanding as a springboard back into the unknown, rather than just settling into the known, settling into the ego. So they're like stepping stones. You come to an understanding, and as soon as it's formed, you're leaping off it onto the next one. And it's like all of these stepping stones, they're just a bit too far away for you to have one foot on one foot on the other. You have to jump. Something in you has to just really take a leap of faith in order to reach that next one. And that's only possible with spirit again. So it all depends upon spirit. And the enemy of spirit is ego, is the self. And so I reach into the ground with my spine. Yeah. So I'm just trying to flatten out this lumbar spine so that my spine can just sink down and go through the feet. So this sense that my spine starts on the ground rather than starting here. So the main function of our legs, other than moving us around, is to split with the earth, is to produce a barrier between the earth and the head. Because if you had a really good connection with the earth, you wouldn't be able to think, because the earth would just be draining all of that anxiety and that sort of high frequency energy that's required to be anxious, to think. That would all be drained out of you. Yeah. So we're just trying to, so the min meng pushing back, and just a sense that your spine is just reaching down each leg. So it's bifurcating at the sacrum. So this is what John meant by bum in. Yeah. So bum in isn't just an adjustment I make here. It's a completely new conception of the body. The body as something that's just actively engaged with the ground all the time in an energetic way. Yeah, so if you find yourself thinking to yourself, then basically your posture has gone. Because when your posture is right, you cannot think to yourself. It's just too interesting what you're doing to disengage with the world and start wanking in your own head. Yeah. And so just and you can just feel it. I mean, meditation is basically just all about just watching what you're doing with your mind. You can see as soon as you feel the desire to express an opinion, to express your point of view, you've lost the ground. Okay, so let's just, yeah, so here, just feeling the roundness, the ward off. So obviously you've got ward off in the arms. So this sense that the hands are coming together, but the elbows are drifting apart. So it says in the classics, the arms are bending. The arms are bent, but they're wanting to straighten. Yeah. So I am holding them in this bent shape, but actually they're wanting to do this. Yeah? So there's like a tension. There's a dynamic tension. It's two opposing forces, elastically opposing each other. And then the ward off in the legs. which is just the same thing really. It's this sense that the feet, if they carried on under the ground, would actually meet in a point the same way that the hands would come together like this. Yeah. So this feeling that the knees are drifting out, the feet are coming in, so you're very much on the outside edges. And this is just being encouraged to just relax and spread. And then in a sense, the most important one is the one that's in your spine, the ward off that's in your spine. So this sense of your spine curving like this, yeah? Like it's the back of a circle that includes the other person. Yeah? And this sense that your spine is continuing around the circle, especially here, this is going, releasing down. So the bottom of the S in your spine has completely disappeared. And now you're just going down into the legs and touching the ground. So this is basically ward off. It's not just something that's happening in the arms, it's also in the spine. Yeah. So when a master puts his hand up like this for you to engage in pushing hands, yeah, it's not just the hand that comes up, they pull, the spine is pulled back, yeah. And it's that sort of springiness in the spine that gives it the ability to fire energy. So when you're doing the form like rollback and you're just presenting your arms, there's a sense that the arms have come forwards because your back has pulled back, because you've hollowed your chest, yeah? So we just really want to make the spine flexible, especially the part where it's most stiff, which is in the lower back, the part just above the sacrum. So in a lot of people, it's virtually fused. They've just got no mobility there. And it's interesting, of the two people I work with, the two that are most soft here, so actually just find it easiest just to really melt down into their legs, are Sayala, who's done loads of meditation. I mean, she normally lives in Japan and she's a nun in a monastery. Yeah, so there's something about sitting in meditation that just softens this area. You'd probably expect it to sort of just solidify it, but it doesn't. They just become soft here, yeah? Because the ego, although we feel ourselves in our heads, it's actually all constructed from here, from where we feel the ground. So we feel the ground here, not in our feet. So we're trying to feel the ground with our feet so that this can just soften and just reach down, yeah. And the other one, the other student that I work with that is very soft here, she's just a grandma and she's totally devoted to her grandchildren. So she's always cancelling, but oh, my daughter needs me to do this, that, and the other. So she lives a life that has no sense of self. It's just what she can do for other people, yeah. And it just means that she's unreliable. But whenever I work with her, I'm just really grateful because she shows me something here that I don't have myself, yeah. So that, we're very good at rearing up. So we're very good at drawing energy up into our heads and creating thoughts and opinions and then shitting them all over the world. So what we're not good at is just melting, becoming humble and just reaching down to the ground through the lower back, yeah. So we spring from the ground, not from here, not from our break. The upper lower body break. So stop activity and return to stillness. And that stillness will be even more active. So, when we sink and relax and just settle in, then we're just sort of storing energy. And then there just comes a point where it's like it starts to boil and the top blows off, off the pan. And suddenly you're just in this state of really real activity that's coming from energy in your body and spirit rather than from your thinking. So this has to be quietened in order to get into energy. Okay. And now just moving side to side and just feeling the rising. You know, I'm going down into this foot and it brings up like a mist. So I have to make sure that as I sink into the leg, I don't let my bum go out. So I don't settle on top of the leg, which is what we're used to. I'm somehow going down through the leg. I'm injecting into the ground. And then just feeling what's rising. Yeah, so if you work properly, then your work re-enchants the world. So as I sink down here, there's actually a mist that rises up. Yeah. That's what, you know, like the movies that appeal to me are not ones that you would say are food for thought, but ones that are food for the imagination, ones that just offer useful images that you can use to just re-enchant the world, yeah? So I'm sinking into this swamp and this fine miasmatic mist is rising up. Yeah, so the human mind has divested the world of magic and we just want to reinvest it. So we're using spirit to invest the world with magic. Exactly the way that children do. Way. So we're just trying to do repetitive exercises in the least mechanical way we can. So it's not our mind imposing a routine, a regime. So we're not being little fascists, which we normally are. So it's almost like this exercise is doing you. You're being drawn. You're being pulled around this circuit. You're being led a merry dance. So it's got like a natural figure of eight feeling in the hips. Ooh. And just feel as soon as you start to get some handle on it, some grasp, As soon as you start to make sense of it, your bum goes out. Yeah, so we're not moving into light, we're moving into darkness. Yeah? Moving ever netherward. Yeah? Such a beautiful word, netherward. So it's like going into the ground, yeah. Yeah, so if you see things too clearly, your mind will set, and then you'll become sure of yourself. And then you'll have stopped moving. If only for a moment, yeah? You have to keep moving. Otherwise it will die. And then you'll have to create it every time. Okay, so let's just bring it back. And again, ward off. So this roundness here, this roundness here, and this roundness, especially in the lower back, so rounding the other way than normal. So the min-meng squeezing backwards. And just a sense that something in you has just let go in order to allow the spine to go down. It's a bit like letting go with your sphincter when you shit. Yeah? Something in you, so you have to be careful you don't shit yourself. Okay, so now just sink those directions. Sink the shoulders, heavy elbows, loosen the hips, and concentrate the spirit. So what we want is to feel that when I loosen here, there's a sense, when you relax, there's always a sense of expansion, like something is let go and it's got longer or bigger area or whatever. So there's this sense that when I let go in the hips, they sort of just spread, and I actually end up just filling my body, because normally we're quite tight here. So there's a sense that this area is smaller in our mind than it is in actuality. So when I loosen here, I just want to feel that sort of that relaxation out, which is naturally returned because my body has a limit. It can't go beyond the limit of my body. So that energy gets returned. And that's the Dan Chen, basically. So if you think the Dan Chen is like the middle of the figure of eight, you know, where it crosses over, or where the cardioid funnels in. Yeah. So I'm expanding here, and there's just a natural return here. So in a sense, my strongest ward off is actually in my hips. Now, this sense of a cave, this sense that there's movement in and movement out from the sides. And all the time, we're just trying to hit the mind that would let it happen naturally. Everything that we're trying to do should happen naturally, if only we got rid of our unnatural mind. So when something in you just lets go and you're not afraid anymore of just making real contact with the ground, then it just all falls into place, yeah? So that's like a fearless spirit. It's like a courage. Yeah? Okay, so now let's move side to side, but just feel, let's just do a bit of breathing first, just to really connect with like a long energy, a sort of slow rhythm. Yeah, so this is good for just making the spine more flexible. You have to really feel it getting into the lower back as well as the upper. So just allow your head to move. And just be careful that when you do this bit, when you breathe out, you don't pull your tails out of the ground, you stay rooted. Yes, as we breathe in and we extend the spine, you can easily feel this happening, something coming up, but just feel as though that extension is also pushing your spine into the ground. And then just stay in it here. And you just want to get, what John would say is just sink into your energy. Yeah? So you just want a feeling that it's not you that's breathing, you are being breathed by energy. So it's already beginning to come back in. So there's a point where I have to go, and it's already beginning to come back out. So it's like there's something that's just leading me all the time. It's not coming from me, or it's not coming from my mind, my designing mind. So the movement is always into softness. And that only happens if you practice. So when you start something new, it's always rough and hard to start with, but it's only through daily practice that it will become soft and will become internalized, become part of you. So we just want the work, the exercises, to change our mind. So the work is radical and revolutionary. So radical just means of the root. So radix is root. And revolutionary just means it's going around in circles, basically. So it's all to do with turning and returning. Okay. And now just back into, so basically back into the yielding phase. Remember Max, one of Max's birthday parties when he was little? Yeah. Yeah, they'd all had the meal and the cake, and there was like one piece of cake left. So I just came in and said, "Who wants the last piece of cake?" And they all stood up and went, "Me, me, me." Yeah. So it's like just this beautiful image of ego, because that's basically what we're doing all the time. We're leaping up and down saying, "Me, me, me." Yeah. And so here it's there's no me. Yeah. You're just melting into the environment. You've almost become, the cloud of gnats or the mist. Your boundary has just softened so much that you're almost vaporizing. So I love the image of, having just stepped out of the shower. Yeah. If you were to stand like this, yeah. So you'd have the water trickling down. So that's like an image of gravity. And you'd have the steam from the hotness, from the heat rising from you. So that's like the image of levity. So we're very much caught in the middle. Yeah, there's a real balance between these two things. And one produces the other. That's what we have to come to a real understanding of. The same here, that it's the expansion within a closed system that actually brings it back and allows it to gather, allows it to concentrate. So it's my sinking, the fact that I've just really just released here and just let my body just not just be pulled by gravity, but I have to really want to get into the ground. There's some really active part of my spirit that's just saying, "Oh, I've got to get down there." Yeah. And then that will produce the rising. Okay. And now let's just sort of just do this one, but we want to just really feel the foot just going down and taking the ground. So my mind is really in the foot. Exactly the same way, and often use the image of the hammer in homage to Heidegger. So, if you are reaching for a tool, for a hammer, your mind would be completely in the hand as it's grasping the hammer. Yeah? And then when you use the hammer, your mind would be totally in the head of the hammer and in the head of the nail. Yeah? So we're very good at putting our mind where it needs to be. So here, but we don't like putting our mind in our feet because the ground is dirty and it's down there and yeah. And so here we just really want to feel my mind is in my foot and my foot is taking something, is taking the ground. So like real delicacy, respect, yeah. Like Thich Nhat Hanh in his mindful walking, he just called it kissing the ground. So your foot goes down and you take something into yourself. Yeah, so when I learned to massage, one component of the course was learning to massage with your feet. So learning to walk on the person without putting all of your weight into it, because you obviously hurt them. And it's very interesting being massaged by someone's feet, because the hands are very clever and manipulative. You know, so you can feel the person actually using their mind, you know, albeit a compassionate mind, to do things to you. Because the feet can't really behave like that. You just put your foot on someone, it's just an honest foot. And it's much, in a sense, it's much easier to open up to that when you don't feel yourself being manipulated. So just feeling the foot and the toes, just open the toes. And just feeling it scooping, yeah? So in Hebrew, the leg is called the regel, and the foot is called the calf regel. And calf just means spoon. So the foot is the spoon of the leg. And so it's scooping the ground. It's not just clumping down flatly like a flat-footed person. It's really subtle, and it's going into the ground like this. Yeah? And then that just brings up the other foot, because the circuit just continues here. And again, just keeping the min meng pushing back, keeping that ward off in your lower back. And just feel it. As soon as your mind wanders and you start thinking to yourself, you lose the foot and you lose the ground. You can't have the mind in the bottom of your body and in the top of your body at the same time. Way. Okay. So now just bring it back here. And I just feel there's a real sense of sort of almost like someone is squashing you down into your posture. So your spine has really bowed, almost like your head is being pressed down into your neck. Yeah, so you know in the classics where it says pluck up the back, and it just seems a bit weird, yeah? But there's that, it's space just ward off in the back. So when you get a ward off here, there's almost a sense that you're being held from here rather than here. So when you're held from here, this is the vertical spine. This is the round spine. So you need both. You need to work on both, but this is the one we're working on at the moment. And then you just get a real sense of the wings, like the, you know, just the meatiness of the shoulder blades. Okay. And now let's just activate these two muscles. So just turning, without turning the hips too much, just turning to the side and just feeling like you're doing it by tightening one of these spinal erectors preferentially. So when you tighten the muscle, your mind gets drawn into it. So here, and here. So these two muscles are very important. So they're very much of the spirit, and the ego doesn't like them. Yeah. So any enemy of your enemy is a friend. So if you're not using those muscles, then basically you're being weak. You're indulging. And just be aware that everything that we do, there's a multitude of wrong ways of doing it. Yeah, so I could be just turning my shoulders like this and it'd be completely useless. Yeah. So I just have to make sure your mind is in the right place. My mind is here and it's, I'm really meaning it. So to activate those muscles, you really do have to get angry. So get real. Yeah, is that phrase? Get real. Yeah. Stop being a wanker. Get out of your head. And these muscles are, they're really real. So the real has nothing to do with the world. The world is like a man-made construct. There's a philosopher called Mark C. Taylor, and he just said this beautiful phrase, God is just another word for the real. So the real is really just that sea of, that ocean of feelings and drives, the unconscious really, what Freud called the unconscious, yeah. It's sort of just simmering away that the ego and society tries its best to just keep under wraps because you can't control it. You can't control the real. Is all you can do is just let it possess you or enter it. Yeah, so psychoanalysis, which I always have a great deal of sympathy for, that's trying to sort of just dig into your psyche and just expose the real, whereas psychotherapy does the opposite. It just tries to heal any potential leakage of the real into your life. So psychotherapy attempts to rehabilitate the ego, heal and rehabilitate the ego, where psychoanalysis aims to rupture it so that the unconscious can show itself, if only fleetingly. And that's very much like, spirit. Spirit just comes in glimpses. Okay, so now let's just bring it back. So now it has like a deep core of just ruthless toughness. And the best example of that I've ever seen is just Mike Tyson's face before the fight starts, when they're just facing each other. Yeah, he's there to do a job and he's going to do it. So he's not giving them the eye. He's not being clever. He's just inside his body and he's going to erupt. So that's like a real inner stillness. Yeah. So they're all meditators. These great athletes. They all know how to quieten their mind because they've learned from experience that when it's not quiet, they don't perform very well. Yeah. And this is the problem now. We're never called upon to outperform ourselves. So we're never called upon to have inner quiet. So you have to really call it upon yourself. You just basically have to be tough with yourself. Okay, now let's just do just a little bit of turning. But again, just imagine you're in the water. So you're having to use these muscles in the back knitted into the legs. So the motor is in the muscles in the lower back. And it's grim. The flavor of the work is grim. And the flavor of spirit is John's other favorite word, glad. Yeah. So like a gladdening, a gladness. Yeah. So this sense of like gaiety, what we would have called gay. So a glad heart. So a heart that just knows that happiness is not something you're entitled to, it's something you create with your work. Okay. Just back. Again, ward off as big as you can here, as big as you can here, and as big as you can here. And it's difficult, you know. To start with, when you start getting ward off in the legs, it just makes the bum stick out. And it's just because there's a lack of flexibility in the lower back. So we just have to pull the bum in and just let it go down the legs. So that phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. So we just want the feeling that nothing is familiar. You know, as we're walking through the apartment, it's always new because your spirit is always conjuring new forms, really, new imaginative forms. Yeah. The same, you know, just exactly the same as kids. Yeah. Okay, now let's just squat, because this is useful for stretching the lower back and just getting close to the ground. So just feeling, we have to just get away from the image of the ground as just a hard surface that's there for us. Yeah. So this is why, you know, it's often useful doing the Tai Chi like outside on uneven terrain, you know, where you're having, I know it's annoying, but that, you know, when one foot is slightly higher than the other, and you're having to be really careful where you place your foot and how you put your weight into the foot. It just encourages you to have your attentive mind in your feet rather than in your head. So this sense that you know, like you've taken mushrooms or something, you know, and, you know, psychedelic, it's a good term for it, because basically everything becomes colored, yeah? And everything starts moving. Yeah? So the things that we normally take to be still and inanimate take on a life, and movements of the ground start sort of throbbing. Yeah, you just realize that everything has a heartbeat and everything is breathing. And the word psychedelic, it just means making the soul visible. It's beautiful. So in a sense, it's like we're inducing a trip. We're using heightened awareness and energy and breathing to bring the mind into a state that is receptive to energy. That's exactly what happens when you take, like a psychedelic drug, on mushrooms or LSD or ketamine, one of those. Yeah. So this is what's important, to be able to just use your spirit to induce an experience. So you don't need to take the mushrooms. You don't need to go to Iceland to see wonderful vistas. You can see them in your own room, in your own body. And then just placing the hands, but placing them so gently that they're listening to the ground, like you're trying to, in those movies where the Indian scout gets down off his horse and puts his ear to the ground and then says, "Oh, the cavalry's coming." So just, we're like using the hands like that. We're listening to the vibrations. But we're also becoming, when you put your hand on the ground, you become ground. The ground is creeping up my arm and into my back, into my spine. So feel the min meng and feel this sort of lump here, where the cervical spine and the thoracic spine join. That's the place, where they say pluck up the back, it's that bit there, the sort of the dowager's hump. So those two places here and the min meng, they're the places that sort of generate the heat for the body. That's what the sumo guys do. Yeah. So you've seen them, they face off against the other person, sort of down like this. And then they just put their hands down, they just bring their weight over their hands. And then when they come up, they're bringing the ground with them, they're bringing real power. And then just up. And again, just so just see how you feel, yeah? So you can tell that that exercise is good just by how it charges you up, yeah? Okay, now let's just go down, just almost like a squat, and then just bringing the spirit up by tensing these muscles. So just pull your head back and then just let your legs straighten up under that, yeah? And then head, and then just let yourself come up with it, yeah? Head, So slow and connected. And head. Okay. So you have to be careful with that one. You don't overdo it. Yeah, but it's a great exercise because you just feel the two different minds. You know, so when you're close to the ground, when you've gone down, it's just naturally humble. So there's a sense that that's where you belong. You know, you're just a peasant. You belong in the dirt. Yeah. And when you come up, this is like really special. Yeah. So we want this still to have a sense of it being pulled down by the ground. So we haven't cut off from the ground and then just standing in this arrogant posture. It's a posture of real worship. Yeah? You're just revering, and all the time there's like these elastic pulls down to the ground. So this is our problem, you know, when we rose up into a vertical posture, we became arrogant. You know? So we just have to reconnect with the ground. The ground is the source of our humility. And then just see what happens when we come up into our vertical stance. And then it's just so energetic. There's just so much movement up and down. And it's no longer you. You're just trying your best to maintain this channel so that the heaven and the earth can talk to each other through you. So sink the shoulders, heavy elbows, loosen the hips, and concentrate the spirit. So they go together beautifully, those four instructions. You just want to feel just how much of an effort it is to stay up there. You know, so basically those that get into internal work, yeah, at some point in their life, they've just stopped and they've looked at themselves and they feel so ashamed that the rest of their life goes a different way, takes a different path. Yeah. So instead of thinking, oh yes, I'm wonderful, yeah, you just think, God, I'm such a dick, yeah. And happened to me when I was at school and we were like in the classroom, the teacher didn't come, so we were sort of messing around. And then one of the boys, it was an all boys school, one of the boys said, let's have a vote to see who's the most handsome of us. Yeah. And of course, my mother had always told me, oh, you're the most handsome boy in the world. Yeah, so I believed her, being stupid. Yeah. So I just knew I was going to come top. Yeah. And of course, I came like third from the bottom. And that's when I thought, shit, maybe she's been lying to me all these years. Yeah. So I was sitting on the train yesterday, I think it was, coming home late. Train was jam-packed, mainly with soldiers going home for the weekend so their mum can do their washing and bake them a cake. And there's a guy, every guy in Israel is an ex-shot soldier, yeah? So they've all got great bodies and they've got ruthless minds, yeah? So he was sitting opposite me and he started drifting off and his bag fell forwards and hit my leg. And he just sort of woke up and I smiled at him and the look he gave me, I just withered, yeah? No time for smiling, yeah. What's interesting about them being in the army is that they make friendships that last a whole lifetime, yeah. And, you know, which we never do, you know, when you don't have that conscription, and they look out for each other all the time. Yeah? And so that it's like they're always on guard. Okay, now let's bring it up, but now just, again, just feeling it like you're gathering, you're concentrating the spirit even more. Yeah, so nothing is slackening off, it's tightening up, if anything. The more closer together your legs are, the tighter you can be inside. And just feel it. When the legs straighten, the bum tends to go out. So you still want this feeling that you're reaching with your mind. Your mind is reaching into the feet. So the feet are listening. The feet are sort of doing this all the time. And just a sense that your legs are just as much trying to pull you down towards the ground as they are keeping you away from it. So again, there's this real sort of elastic balance, this equilibrium between these two tendencies. And we just have to be careful that when we do straighten up, we don't lose the pull. We don't snap the elastic. The connection is still there. And you remember that story of Chong Song Feng, the guy that's meant to have invented, there's this sort of, they're saying he was walking in the snow, yeah, and he was leaving behind him a trail of So the snow melted as he passed, and behind him there were like crocuses coming out of the ground and blooming. So this just a sense that your energy is just coloring. It's affecting everything around you. And just feeling that. So you've got all these sort of tentacles that are just reaching out and gently touching things. And it's animating the world. Okay, so let's finish.